Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas with another episode of Veterans in Politics. Today we're going to have Louis Schneider, and Louis Schneider is a Nevada attorney. We're going to talk to him about the family court and see his input and listen to his input, see what's going on. Jim, you got anything?
No, actually, I'm just, I want to thank you. You had to make a long drive. It's Saturday, so I want to thank you very much for taking some time out of your busy weekend. And
happy to be here. So, how can I help you guys?
Louis Schneider, how you doing today, sir?
I'm all right. A little tired from the week. Got up early, feed the horses, but I'm good.
Yeah. Horses?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
What part?
You got horses?
Lots of horses, yeah.
How many horses you got?
Right now, 8. Summer rescues, take in and take care of them.
What are the names?
Well, Shiloh, Pearl, Daisy, Angel, Zeus, Max, Sasha, and I think that's it.
7.
7. I'm missing one. Who am I missing?
Missing a horse.
Angel, Max, Shiloh. You got Daisy, you got Sasha. Socks. I forgot about it. He's a rescue horse out of Texas. He was a cattle ranch horse, and they were going to put him down.
Oh, boy.
And took him in, and he's living out his life.
So Sasha, is she a Russian?
Sasha's a wild Mustang, a wild cop Mustang that somebody adopted, and they couldn't handle her. And I don't know what the problem is because she's a sweetheart. I mean, and dealing with horses is just completely different than dealing with dogs. I've had dogs my whole life. I can train a dog to do anything, but it took me a good 5 years to start to mentally hook up with horses and understand what drives them.
And you got big dogs, huh?
I got some big dogs and taking rescue dogs too. Yeah.
Give us a bio about yourself.
Oh gosh. Graduated the University of Massachusetts in marketing. Got a job with the second largest computer company in the world, Digital Equipment Corporation, selling systems in Chicago. Yeah. And then, I'm selling these $1 million computer systems. There's a guy that I bring in to do my financing from U.S. Leasing. And it turns out that I found out this guy's making $300,000-$400,000 a year. And I said, gosh, I want to do that. So I went into equipment finance and kind of turned that into a big business and took off and started a business up at Lake Tahoe and grew it up. And then just before we had it sold for an obscene amount of money, the .com stocks crashed and burned. And I had 2 full-time attorneys on staff, and it killed the company.
At that time, were you an attorney?
No.
Okay.
So I had 2 full-time attorneys on staff. One of them was Chip Kelly's father. Chip Kelly, the head football coach that was at Oregon. Yeah. And his father is E. Paul Emanuel. He was one of my full-time attorneys on staff, and I absolutely loved all the legal work that we got involved with. But I was not enjoying managing people. I had over 300 employees. Yeah. So when the company crashed and burned, and I gave the place away for debt, I didn't want to do that anymore. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll take a shot at going to law school. Mm-hmm. And I took the entrance exam and never really was a dedicated student, and I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to do it.
Right.
So talked to some friends that were attorneys, and they said, just treat it like a full-time job. And I did. I worked 8-9 hours a day every day, and I graduated in the top half of the class.
Wow.
Just barely top half, but I'm in there.
Right.
And then got a job at the district attorney's office, and did some.
Under what DA?
Dave Roger at the time. So I was volunteering at the juvenile DA's office while I was waiting for my bar results to come in, and then I went down to the criminal division for a while. And one of the reasons that I got into family law was because I'd gotten divorced in Massachusetts, and my son's mother got custody of him. But I had stayed home with him, and we were bonded, and that's all I cared about was my son. And so by the time he was in 4th grade, his mother agreed to let him come live with me in Lake Tahoe. And so it was great having him out in Tahoe, and he's been with me ever since. And now he's a lawyer against my wishes. But
against your wishes? Usually parents will want their kids to be lawyers.
Well, my son's smart, really smart. He got into medical school but didn't want to be a doctor. And I said, well, you're going to be a doctor. And for the first time in my life, I heard I'm an adult and you can't tell me what to do. And I said, I'll make another one just like you if you don't. And so he got upset with me and he took off, went to his mom's house in Boston and didn't talk to me for almost a year. And while he was away, he took the LSAT and applied to law school, and now he's back and he got a full ride scholarship to law school. He didn't have to pay for anything. Books, parking, they paid for everything.
He's a lawyer today.
He's a lawyer now, yeah.
Oh, congrats. How does that make you feel?
I'm proud that he's making his way, and I know he can afford to take care of himself, and it's a lot of, right now he's spending time trying to figure out what he wants to do, so he's spending time working with me, and we do trials together, and he's a smart guy. He really is. He adds a lot, and I've had to learn to keep my mouth shut. That's a really tall order.
Wow. You do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I have learned, Steve. I had to learn, yeah.
Can you teach that skill to Steve?
You know what? I'm still trying to master it myself.
Yeah, me too, by the way. I like picking on Steve. But yeah.
So how long you been practicing law, Lou?
16, 17, in my 17th year now.
So you say family, your experience in the family court in Massachusetts drove you to do family law?
Well, I had my son, but it was on a handshake agreement with his mom. And while I had him, and that's all I cared about, was I just wanted to be with him, and I just loved being a parent. So I agreed to pay her child support and fly her out to Tahoe anytime she wanted to come. And I was afraid she would take him from me because there was never a court order that he'd be living with me.
Right.
So I kind of read everything I could get my hands on. And then when I went to law school, I took family law. And then when I took the bar exam, it was on the bar exam, and I thought I knew it pretty well. And so after I left the DA's office, I was going to do criminal law, and I thought I'd take my hand in family law, and I like it. Family law is the only where I get to make a real difference, I think. With criminal cases, almost all your clients have done something wrong, and you get them a soft landing, and that's your job if you can. But with family law, you get to make a real difference in people's lives.
There's no soft landing.
Well, no, there are. I mean, for instance, I very rarely will take a case where where somebody's asking to remove a child from the state or from the other parent. It's heartbreaking. And in fact,
talking about relocation?
Talking about relocation. In fact, that's what I wrote. When you go to law school, you write a thesis paper because basically it's a PhD. It's a doctorate in jurisprudence, and I wrote it based on my own experiences about kids being taken away from their parents, and it's generally the mom. At least it was back in Massachusetts on the East Coast. Moms still get custody most of the time. And when I originally moved out to Lake Tahoe, to get away after the divorce and the custody fight, I was traveling back to see my son every 3 weeks. I was flying 75, 80,000 miles a year. Wow. And so you spend a lot of time in those airports, and at the end of summers, you see, dads huddled with their kids in the corner and saying goodbye to their kids. And it's heartbreaking to see what happens. I remember that when I'd have my son for the summer, when I first moved out to Tahoe, after he went home, I'd go into his bedroom and, to find something, and I'd turn on the TV and it'd be on the cartoon channel. And it was heartbreaking. And so I wrote my thesis paper about the effects that it has on children that don't have both of their birth parents in their lives. And it's particularly bad. In fact, those studies, you can find them on the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. It's particularly hard on girls that don't have their natural fathers in their lives, because kids have an infinite capacity to love. I mean, you can have a birth father and a stepdad, and if they're good people, you get a lot from both of them. But if your natural parent rejects you, kids blame themselves. And they think they're not good enough for their parents, and that's a terrible thing.
What about in the cases that the courts rip the parents from the child, and the child, no communication, the parent has no communication to the child. They can't call them, they can't write them, they can't text, they can't do anything. And does won't the child believe that the parent abandoned them, especially at a young age?
Children always blame themselves, and it's something you want to try to avoid. And in Nevada, the judges have an obligation to reunite children with their parents. They have to do that by law.
Why are they doing that?
Most of them are doing that, Steve. But when there are extenuating circumstances, if parents on drugs, a danger to themselves or danger to the child, or violent, domestic violence is a terrible thing. The judges will separate. In fact, I got to tell you, a judge that I know you never liked very much, but I thought she was a great judge, was Rena Hughes.
Can't stand her.
I had a case with Rena Hughes where a mother had taken a spatula to a little girl, and she was on meth. The mother was on meth, and beat this child with a spatula. It was horrible. The pictures were horrible, and I was in court asking that child be taken away from her and given to my client, the father, and I showed Judge Hughes those pictures. And I'll tell you, Steve, she about came out of her chair and she screamed at that woman because the woman said, Judge Hughes said, why did you hit her? And she said, well, I hit her with a spatula because it hurt when I hit her with my hand.
Oh, shoot.
And Hughes came across that bench. I mean, she was really upset. And she said, you're lucky I'm not your criminal, I'm not your judge in your criminal case. And that trial's coming up. But that woman hurt that child horribly. And
I get that. I get that. There's some people that shouldn't be around their kids because of those instances. But what happens when you have parents that haven't done a doggone thing to their child? Well, and they still get, the courts still alienate them from the child?
Steve, I'd have to see a specific case because I got to tell you, I see those judges down at family court. They're the hardest working judges in the county. They have a huge caseload. All those cases are extremely fact specific, and there's layers and layers of law. Criminal law is fairly straightforward, but family law, there's layers of law. And those judges have to weigh the legislative law, the case law, the best interests of the children. And so those cases are so fact specific.
And what does that mean? What does that mean, best interests of the children? Because I'm hearing it so much. What does the best interests of the children mean?
Well, okay, so there's an NRS statute, and it's the 125 statute that states that it lists the criteria that we look at. Which parent is most likely to promote a relationship with the other parent? Right. Which parent has committed domestic violence, and even worse, domestic violence in front of the child? And so you go down that list and you weigh that. Now, in Nevada's a pretty progressive state. I mean, Nevada, in back east, Massachusetts, they throw the dads out with the trash. Moms get custody and dads get visitation. And in fact, my court order was every other weekend and one night a week for dinner. And that's enough to bond with your child? Do I think it's enough? Sure. Is it what I wanted or what my son wanted? Absolutely not. It was a horrible thing. I went from staying home with him as an infant for 9 months when he was born, and then the divorce started, to now I'd drive by his daycare center and I'd look and I knew he was in that building, but I wasn't allowed to go in there during certain times because I had visitation. Now the rules are there. And I thought, that's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing.
Let's talk about the parents that haven't done anything to their child, but yet the courts keep them away from their child. I have parents in California that have permanent stay-away order from their kids, and they haven't done anything. I went through their briefs, their videos, and I can't find anything that says that this parent either physically or mentally or neglect or anything kind of abuse on the child, but yet they have a lifetime stay-away order. What about those parents? Do you believe judges abuse their discretion? Do you believe that judges follow the rule of evidence all the time? Do you believe that a mom could come and say, hey, dad is an alcoholic, and all of a sudden the judge says, okay, dad, now you're going to have to blow into that thing to start your car. You got to get one of those things in your car, but there is no evidence that support that allegation?
See, I've never seen a case like you're talking about right now where they just randomly take somebody away. There has to be a reason. There has to be a reason for that to happen. And paramount safety, what the court's concerned about is the safety of the children. That's first and foremost. So if somebody is an alcoholic and they're drinking and driving with kids in the car, you get pulled over on a DUI, which is a misdemeanor traffic violation, but you got a kid in the back seat, that's now a felony, a child abuse.
And I get that, and they should pay the price for it. What about there's no evidence of drinking and driving? There is no police report. There is no neighbor writing an affidavit, but yet the judge still makes the determination that the parent has to go through drug rehabilitation courses and take drug tests. And by the way, let me ask you a question. Because I was reading the NRS too. In fact, I read a lot of NRS when it comes to family law. And I don't know exactly what NRS, but in the Nevada Revised Statute, it says that the only person that could render a drug test on a litigant is a criminal judge. But the last time I checked, a family court judge is civil. So do they have the authority to actually tell a litigant that they need to go get a drug test? They're not criminal judges, they're civil judges.
Well, it's actually an interesting point. Judge Steele would never order somebody to take a drug test. She's retired now. And she thought it was a violation of constitutional rights to order somebody to do that without probable cause, and that's a criminal court case matter. However, you ask somebody to take a drug test and they don't take it, it's deemed dirty. So they can't make you take it.
Let me just stop you right there.
But if you don't take it, you're done.
Now, I got pulled over by Nevada, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Okay. They asked me to search they wanted to go in my vehicle and retrieve my weapons, right? I said no. It's not the fact that I have something to hide. It's the fact that I'm protecting my constitutional right. There's a lot of parents that have nothing to hide, but if they don't stand up for your constitutional rights, what do you have? What do you have? It's because you said, no, Judge, I don't want to take a drug test. You have no authority to give me a drug test. If you want to change the law, go lobby at the legislature and say that civil judges such as yourself could order litigants to take drug tests. If the law is not there, why are you abusing your discretion? Why are you abusing the law?
Wait,
and because I say I don't want to take a drug test, all of a sudden I'm dirty? No. I'm standing up for my constitutional right. I'm standing up for the law. The law doesn't give you jurisdiction to do that. So I'm not going to do it. Until the law gives you jurisdiction to do it, then I'll go ahead and do it. Until then, no.
If the judges have probable cause to believe that there's something to it, that you're using drugs in the interest of the safety of the children, they'll tell you to go take a drug test. You don't want to take it? Don't. But
that doesn't mean it's dirty. That means you need to go change the law.
That's their policy, though.
Do you believe that discretion is fair?
Do you
believe judges legislate from the bench? Because that's what they're doing.
I don't think they're legislating from the bench, Steve. I think what they're doing is they're trying to protect children. I think that those judges in family court, for the most part, do a good job and care about children.
And you know what? And the detective know that this guy did the murder, but can't prove the guy did the murder. So what the detective do? Plant evidence on the guy, make it look like he did the murder. But we know he did the murder, but we can't prove he did the murder, so we're going to plant evidence. That's basically what, in my perspective, that these judges do. I mean, if they say that, hey, you don't want to take a drug test, so that means you're dirty, I'm taking your kid, that's bull.
Well, it's not quite that cut and dry, Steve, but there is something else. I mean, first of all, people pay off the techs that give you these drug tests. I've heard of cases where people have paid them to fraudulent the charges, to fraud the tests. There's a shampoo you can wash your hair with that'll coat your hair. There's cleansers you can take. There's ways to cheat on these drug tests, and that's a problem. But there's another way that you really can't cheat, and that's the patch system. And it's a gel patch. You peel off the back and you stick it on, and it absorbs everything in your system. So if someone's being falsely accused of using drugs, they should volunteer to take that patch and wear it for 2 weeks. And they can show the judge there's no drugs in my system. So, and there's a way to counter that. There are also other drug tests too that are not that are a lot harder to cheat on. Like now you can test fingernails. You go in and they clip your fingernails and they go back, it goes back 6 months. That's hard to cheat on. But I think that we need to be careful. When I was a juvenile DA, that was right when meth was really hitting this valley hard. And what was happening was horrible to see. I'd be in Child Haven, and there'd be infants in there that were born addicted to methamphetamine, and they would just cry and cry and cry until they exhausted themselves, and they'd fall asleep, and they'd eat, and they would just kept crying. And we didn't know what was going to happen to these kids. And after a while, after 6 months, 9 months, a year, they seemed to be okay, and they went back and more normal. But methamphetamine is a horrible drug because it keeps you awake for days on end, and then you crash, and you're sleeping so soundly. Meanwhile, your boyfriend's raping your kids in the other room. That drug has done more harm to this valley than any single other thing I can think of. And we see it. We see it in the criminal courts. We see it in the family courts. And so when the judges react, which you think is harshly, it's because of the horrors that we've seen in those courtrooms and in our cases.
But you can't bias because there's horrors in one case. You can't carry over a bias onto another case.
It's not a bias. It's a concern. It's a concern for safety. It's a concern for safety because we see what happens when people use drugs.
But the 14th Amendment constitutes a fair judiciary, correct? And judges should follow the rule of evidence, correct? If there's no evidence there, they can't go off pure speculation, pure allegation, pure bias, and they can't take from another case that there might be a drug use there and bring that over into this new case that has nothing to do with that case. But because they got a bias, they want to use that term called discretion. Do you think that's fair for all litigants, though?
Steve, let me ask you this. What's the alternative? Okay, we see horrible things that happen to kids because of people using drugs. So we want to be extra careful, and we want to ask you to take a drug test. And so what are we supposed to do? What's the alternative? We don't do anything until the kids get hurt?
Here's the alternative. Here's the alternative. If a civil judge wants to start telling litigants that they need to go take drug testing, then the family court division need to go lobby the legislatures and change the law. That's why we have legislatures there. That's why we have an assembly. That's why we have a state senate. That's why we have a governor to sign things in the law. That's what they need to do. They can't skirt from the law just because in their mind they feel that I'm protecting the kids or whatever the case might be. They're skirting from their law. They need to follow the law just like they want you to follow the law, just like they want everybody else to follow the law. Why should these judges not follow the law, but they expect everybody else to follow it? We have branches of government. They need to go and follow the branches of government. If not, if a judge could legislate from the bench, let's get rid of these assembly people. Let's not send them to Carson City. Let's get rid of the state senate. Let's get rid of that whole thing. Do you imagine how much tax dollars we could save if we got rid of the whole entire legislative system and allow judges to go ahead and legislate from the bench?
Steve, that's the system. That's the system that we have now. And the judge, when you walk into a courtroom, the judge doesn't say, "All right, everybody take a drug test." They don't do that.
No. You bring up an allegation. A mom or dad brings up allegation. All of a sudden, the judge, now you're going to take a drug test.
It's not just an allegation.
And then you got to pay for it. Look. If I'm in the courtroom and mom is over there telling the judge I'm a druggie, mom needs to pay for my drug test because I'm just going to come out of my pocket.
That's what happens.
And she needs to get one too.
That's what happens. That's what the judges do.
That's not what they do all the time. Do you know how many videos I watch? But the judges don't have, the judges in family court do not have jurisdiction to tell a litigant that they need to go take a drug test. And if it was appealed to the Supreme Court, it would have been reversed. And just because I said, no, I don't want to take a drug test, that doesn't make my test dirty. That makes me somebody that's standing up for my constitutional right, somebody that's standing up for the law, and somebody that's telling you, judge, you better go change the law. If you can't change the law, you can't tell me to go take a drug test.
Steve, What we're dealing with are children that can't defend themselves. And we've got to take an extra cautious step.
The law is clear, Louis Schneider. That's exactly what it says. If they want to change the law, go lobby for it. How hard is that? Why do we keep breaking the law every single time? Why don't we go change it if we got a problem with it?
They're not breaking the law, Steve.
Then what are they doing?
What they're doing is they're trying to make sure that the children are safe. And the judges, almost every judge says, you're asking him to take a drug test, then you take a drug test, you're paying for both of them, and based on the results, we may change that later.
You know something, Louis Schneider? I had to use the bathroom so bad, I ran the red light. Cop pulled me over. Why did you run the red light? I had to go to the bathroom. So, because you got to go to the bathroom, does that give you a reason to run that red light? Did you just break the law? Yes, I did, officer.
There actually is.
It's the same thing, no different. Just because you have an excuse behind it, and it might be legitimate, that doesn't mean you could go break the law.
There's a defense of personal necessity. You can trespass on somebody's property. The classic example is you're on an icy road, you lose control of your car, and you incidentally or accidentally slide off the road, go through the fence, and end up on there. Now, yes, you are trespassing, but not criminally because there's an excuse of personal necessity. You do have to pay for the damages, but you've not intentionally criminally trespassed. So there's a defense of personal necessity.
So, Louis, let me ask you this, just more of a general question. So just to clarify, I agree with what Steve is saying because I'm really big on the whole following the rule of law. But my broader question for you is, I know a lot of attorneys that refuse to do family law anymore. And now you have a good rationale why you do want to follow it because of the experiences with your son and you want to make a difference. And I applaud you for that. However, one of the reasons why a lot of attorneys won't even touch family law is because they're like, to be perfectly honest with you, we don't know what the rules are in that courtroom.
That's part of being an attorney. Every judge has their own proclivities and propensities, and I need to know which judge I'm going to be in and how they're likely to rule based on what type of arguments. And that's part of being a good attorney. And you're right; judges are individuals. Some will, some won't. Some do different things. So, and you're absolutely right about that. But from what I see, those judges are good people. They care about children, and they're doing the best they can. They're overwhelmed. Shutting down the courts last year, this because of the pandemic, has brought on a landslide of cases. I've done 15 trials in 3 months. It's insane right now. And the judges are working just as hard trying to keep up.
So, speaking of trials, what about juries?
What about juries?
In family court?
I don't think it's a good idea because
I know there's an issue with like a lot of people will they get a jury summons in the mail, they just throw it away, and it's hard to get people that want to actually serve on a jury anyway. So that's one argument I've always heard. And then obviously there's going to be exterminating or extreme circumstances in family court where I don't believe there should be a jury.
Well, the logistics of trying to impanel juries is so difficult, especially right now with pandemic. They've got 2 courtrooms set up to do jury trials. I think criminal jury trials for out-of-custody defendants right now, it's out 2.5 years. Right. So there's no way we're going to be able to do it in family court. But the other reason is, from a practical standpoint, is family law is fairly complicated. And it takes somebody that understands it and has been trained to be able to apply it properly. And you can't trust a jury to do that.
Okay. Well, I'm not accusing you of this, okay? I want to make that very clear.
Here comes
But hold on. But I'm just saying that, like, based on how you just answered the question, and I respect that, with what you were talking about with attorneys need to understand the proclivities that each judge has.
Correct.
I don't really think that should have to be the case. Like, if these judges actually just followed the rule of law, then there shouldn't be all this ambiguity. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people were really uneasy with family court. And specialty courts in general, not just family court, because they do take too much into consideration sometimes. It almost seems to me like, okay, that's why there isn't a ton of attorneys that specialize specifically in family law. So it's like it's this closed little network. And stuff like that really concerns me, because now it's almost like the good old boys club where, okay, I'll let you win this one, but I get to win the next one. And
it used to be a lot more like that. When I first started practicing family law, I remember one time I had an attorney look at me and said, hey, let's fight till they run out of money, then we'll settle. I said, what the heck's the matter with you?
Right.
And it used to go that way, and it's not so much that way anymore. There's a lot more departments now. There's a lot more family law attorneys. There's a lot of young people coming in, and it's interesting to see how the dynamic is changing. But years and years ago, you used to hear, rumor about, judges getting paid off. I'm talking old Las Vegas, especially criminal court judges.
Right.
Never, and there was one judge. I never even heard about a judge taking a payoff in a family law case, except for one judge, and he's long gone, and he ended up doing some federal prison time anyway on another issue. So I don't hear it. I don't see it. I don't see the judges playing favorites like they used to. I mean, and you guys, I heard you mention about this. The election with the last guest, and politics is tough. But the way that they elect judges around here, the judges, I have to, it's the lawyers that pay for their campaigns. That's just ripe for abuse. I just don't think that's a good way to go. So with the lawyer that writes the biggest check gets the most time. And then I've never heard Steve mention this, but there used to be a thing called you pay to play. And so if you make donations to this judge, that judge will let you put on a trial so you can bill your clients. I don't see that anymore. I feel like that has gone by the boards. We don't have that anymore. So, I agree with what your last guest said. I think Steve was making this point. I think that the judges should be appointed for a term, maybe 5-6 years, whatever, and then there's a retention election, and if they can get 51% of the vote, they stay in. If they can't, then we put a new judge in there. But this running for judge every time and hitting the lawyers up that are practicing in front of them is just ripe for abuse. I don't like it. I think it's not a good way to go.
I want to piggyback on two things you said. You were talking about complex, right? You're a criminal attorney as well, right?
Yes.
You do criminal law, right?
I do.
And you think that a jury can't make decisions as far as family law is concerned, but yet a jury could make a decision whether somebody lives or die. A jury could make a decision whether somebody stay in prison for 1 year or 25. A jury can make a decision whether you were or exonerated of murder, or you did the murder and you're going to spend time in prison. So if a jury can make all those decisions, why the hell can a jury be in family court and make a decision whether that we should relocate the child or we should take a child away from mom or take a child away from dad? But they can't make a decision there, but yet they can make a decision about somebody's freedom. And plus, let me add one more thing onto that, Mr. Louis Schneider. Taking somebody's kid is a civil death. I got litigants that haven't seen their kids in 2-3 years, zero communication. Could you imagine if that happened to you?
No.
Okay, then.
So hold on, let me answer your question a little. You get a little bit deep here. So first of all, saying that a criminal jury, that's a responsibility that you're talking about. And those responsibilities of the jury to convict, and the sentence is usually up to the judge, but the death sentence has to be done by jury now, by the United States Supreme Court. But there's a narrow range. The jury's presented with a few options, and the DA or the defense attorneys explain, if you believe beyond a reasonable doubt. And by the way, there's different levels of proof. First of all, there's like preponderance of the evidence. That's more likely than not. Then there's clear and convincing, which is like 75% sure. And then there's beyond a reasonable doubt. That's like 93, 94% sure.
Why can't they use that in family court when deciding if a child should be ripped away from a parent?
It's based on preponderance of the evidence, but
instead of one judge making that decision.
But termination of parental rights is clear and convincing. So it's a lower standard than a criminal conviction.
Yeah, but when you terminate somebody's parental rights, you got one judge has all that power. Is it fair to give one person that power, and you don't even know what's going on in that person's mind? Maybe that person had a bad damn day. Maybe that person don't like the way you look. Maybe that person don't like your attorney. Maybe that person favors somebody else. It could be a whole sling of bias there. And one person could tell you, I'm taking your kid from you and you'll never see that kid again. Is that fair though?
Yeah, but Steve, you say this, but I don't know what the facts are behind it. I don't know what that person did. And yes, I mean, I've dealt with the abuse and neglect, the 432B, it's the abuse and neglect system that we have here in Nevada. And they can terminate your parental rights on just clear and convincing evidence.
Do you think that we should have a jury trial or a tribunal within the family court when determining relocation of a child? We could start with those. And termination of parental rights? No,
because first of all...
You think the jury's stupid?
No. I think that logistically it'd be impossible to impanel a jury for these types of decisions.
Or a tribunal. 3 judges make that decision.
Maybe, that might work. That might work. But now you're going to take 3 judges' time.
Yes.
And they all have to hear the same facts. They have to sit through the trial together.
Let me stop you right there. Taking 3 judges' time is nothing. I'm losing my kid forever. Come on, let's balance that out.
Well, wait, hold on. You're mixing and matching termination of parental rights and relocation. Relocation means that...
No, I'm not. I'm just saying that for those 2 different things, relocation of a child and termination of parental rights, for those 2 topics, I think that we should have a jury trial or a tribunal.
You're not going to be able to do a jury trial because the lay people do not have the training and experience to understand the intricacies of the family law and the layers.
But yet they could take your life.
Yeah.
So a jury has an understanding to take your life, but does not have an understanding whether a parent should remain in a child's life. I'm just trying to figure this out.
You're not lining it up properly.
All right, line it up for me.
So look, here's the deal. All right, let's put it in terms of military service. You're divorced, and your wife is now marrying somebody that's active duty military, and they have to report to Pensacola, Florida. Okay, and so they got to move, and he's got to move with his wife. What's she gonna do? Just leave her kid behind? So they go to court and they ask, we want to be able to move. So now the whole process is, first of all, you have to have primary physical custody to be able to move. Or if you get permission from the parent, and if you don't get permission from the parent, then after 30 days you can go and you can ask the court. But you've got to have primary physical custody. So if it's joint physical custody, which is what the new stated preference is in Nevada, you have to have a custody trial to get it down to primary physical custody, and then you got to get permission to move. But if you have primary physical custody, you just have to have a good reason to go. Okay, but now if you're leaving, guess what? You're saddled with the cost of travel for this child to see to the other parent, and the other parent's going to get lengthy summers, alternating Christmas and Thanksgiving, spring break, and then anytime the non-custodial parent wants to fly there for a 3-day weekend. So there's a lot of ways you can button that up, and we do. And now with video conferencing, you can video conference every day. When my son first went off to UNR, we missed each other terribly, and this was, gosh, I'm getting old, but it was so long ago. It was just when we just started doing video conferencing, and it saved the day. I'd get the dogs up on the bed of golden retrievers, and he could see the dogs, and he'd be crying, "Dad, I want to come home." I'm like, "Buddy, you got to stay there, but look, it's okay. We'll do this every day. We'll talk," and you can see the dogs, and it came around, and he was okay. And you know what? He grew, and he was better for it. But it's hard. It is hard to separate. But on the United States Constitution, you have a right to the pursuit of happiness. You can't just lock people down, although Texas did.
And the Constitution also says you have a right to parent your child.
It does, under the case of Santosky.
Right.
But So what?
So whose rights should be terminated?
Well, you have to balance
the mother
those.
that married an Air Force.
You're not terminating rights, though. You're using the wrong language. You're not terminating. You're relocating, and you get an opportunity.
Okay, relocation. And if I'm used to seeing my kid every day or every other day, when you relocate and mom married the Air Force person, like you said, and move into Pensacola, why am I being punished from seeing my kid? Why am I being punished? Because you decided that you needed to marry this guy and move. Why am I being punished?
Steve?
And I don't even know the behind the scenes. Maybe you're doing that to relocate. Maybe you're going to divorce the guy later.
Steve,
who knows?
It's a terrible thing. Relocation is a terrible thing, and I generally don't take those cases. I don't like them. I don't want to do it. And you take a child away from a parent, it breaks your heart.
And isn't there rules to relocate children? They're wherever you're moving the child to, it has to be an extended family members, or it has to be.
That's a consideration. There has to be an advantage to the other parent from going there. So they've got support. Maybe it's in the form of family, or she's got, or he or she has a new husband or wife. But all of those things have to add up to outweigh the other parent. The non-custodial parent does have a right to see that child. And the courts do a pretty good job of making sure they get a chance to see him, but you're not going to see him every day. That relationship does change. Right. Okay, now you can complain about it, and you're doing a great job complaining about it, but what's the alternative? We lock people up, you can't go? Texas did that. Texas said you can't leave the county. You cannot leave the county. In Texas, you cannot leave the county. And now Nevada has a new law that you can't move more than 100 miles away.
Just like in the military, okay? When you have a child, it's not your life anymore. Now you have to take your life and make it the child's life, because everything you do is for the child.
Right.
Just like in the military, you knew what the terms were. You knew you were going to be away from family every once in a while. You knew they could end up moving you somewhere. So when you have kids, then you have to think about the child. You have to say, hey, do I really want to move away from take my kid
You're
with
right.
me and have the child's father not be in the child's life, and I know my kid loves that dad, loves his father, and I'm going to move, and now he's going to see his father every 3 months. If it's the best interest of the child, then shouldn't it be to keep the families together?
Yep.
You knew the risk. You knew the risk
you.
when you get divorced. You knew the risk when you have a child. You knew the risk when you got married to somebody that's on active duty. You know those risks. So why is it now the child's? Why is it now the child's problem and put all that burden on the child and rip that child away from a loving parent?
You're 100% right. I hate to see it. It's heartbreaking. But what are we supposed to do? We can't just lock people down and say you can't have a life. So what do? You want to move away? Great, leave the kid. Is that what you want to do?
Exactly. If you want to move away, then you should leave the kid with the other parent.
Okay.
That's what you should do. That'd be the right thing to do. If you want to go take your life, then you have to give up seeing that child all the time like you were before.
See, let's go back to the whole major problem that goes on here. And it boils down to this. And I tell my clients this. If you and the other parent don't make decisions about your child together, you're going to force a perfect stranger in a black robe to make the most intimate decisions in your life.
I agree.
And that's what happens. And then you get lawyers.
Mediate.
Absolutely, they should.
And mediation is mandatory, correct? So why are some judges skipping that part and go right into trial?
Mediation is the policy of the court. I don't believe it's mandatory. It's a policy.
It's a policy. I thought that policy was mandatory. I thought it was in the Nevada revised statute saying that you need to mediate your case.
It might be. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know whether it is or it isn't. I just thought it was a policy of the court. I didn't think it was an NRS. But mediation is a good thing. But the mediators down there, I think what really needs to happen is the judges and another judge that you've had fight with, Bryce Duckworth, great judge, caring gentleman, wonderful man. He forces parents to make decisions, and he does a good job at it. And he's a valuable resource at that courthouse. I really think that Bryce Duckworth and Chuck Hoskins are some of the best judges down there.
You and I have different opinions on some of these judges, because I think Bryce Duckworth is biased as crap, because he forced me in a case, and then he had a predetermined thing to prove me guilty and said my organization is corrupt and blah blah blah, making all these facts without.
Sounds like you're personally involved, Steve.
His facts, he made his facts. He had no evidence to support it. And if he's doing that to me, he's probably doing that to somebody else. Chuck Hoskins, I could talk about him till the cows come home. What he did with the guardianship was a travesty.
I'm telling you,
travesty.
As a practicing
how he
lawyer,
treated that guardianship.
I don't know about that, but as a practicing,
you didn't watch the movie?
As a
The Guardian on Amazon? You should go watch that.
You told me to, that's right. As a practicing attorney in family court, I'm happy when I get cases in front of Duckworth. I'm happy when I get cases in front of Hoskins. I know what they're going to do. I know how they react. I know I'm going to get a fair trial, and it doesn't matter who the other attorney is. I know it's going to be based on facts. And those guys, and more Bryce than Chuck. Chuck does a great job in his own right. But Judge Duckworth, he really forces people to make decisions about their children. He doesn't like to. He doesn't want to make those decisions, and he cares about children. He really, truly cares.
There's 26 now. There's 26 family court judges. Do you think all of them are ethical?
Now, yes, I do.
All of them.
Well, I don't know what people do behind closed doors, but in the courtrooms, yeah. In the courtrooms, I see them doing the right things. I see them doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Would you run for family court judge?
Never.
Would you tell anybody to run for family court judge?
Some people really want to be a judge, but I'm telling you right now, those are the hardest working judges in this valley.
If you had to run against a judge, what do you think the repercussions would be?
Yeah, well, that's part of our problem, right? Is this election, and who's donating, and
what
you're out.
What do you think the repercussions would be if you said, I'm going to run against this judge? What do you think would happen to you?
I think that you'd probably get the cold shoulder the next time you had to walk into that courtroom, right? Wouldn't you think?
Would you get the cold shoulder from other judges because you run against one of their friends or colleagues?
Maybe, but judges are pretty good about staying away from that stuff.
And I think that's the problem, because I was putting people to run against certain judges. I'm not going to lie, okay?
Yeah.
Because I feel they're corrupt and they shouldn't be on the bench at all. And this is what I get. Hey, if I run against this judge is friends with this judge, that judge, all my cases are going to sacrifice for it.
I don't think that's the case.
Now, this is the conversation I'm having with attorneys,
right,
not just one.
That's a valid concern, but I don't think it's legitimate.
But we're talking to multiple attorneys. We're not talking just one attorney. This is not an isolated incident. They feel that there's repercussion if they run against a judge. So I came up with this thing about remove or retain, and that's what I was talking about off camera with that assembly candidate. Remove or retain. So if a judge is the incumbent and runs unopposed, right, in the general election, then that judge goes on the ballot, and under the name it says remove or retain.
Yep.
So if remove gets more votes than retain, then the seat's vacated. Judicial Selection Committee comes in and starts taking applications.
It's brilliant. I think it's great. I think that's the way it should be.
And sends 3 names to the governor, and the governor picks one of the 3 names.
It's the way it should be.
And go for retention the following election year.
It's the way it should be.
That's how it's supposed to be?
That's
do
how
you
I
like
believe
that?
It. Yes.
Would you advocate for that in the next legislative session?
Absolutely. No question
Because
about
we tried to get it passed with Dr. Robin Titus this last session, who's a minority whip, and it didn't even come out of a committee thanks to Brittany Miller, and it got killed in committee. So we're hoping that the next time around,
I definitely would like to see it go that way. I definitely would like to see it go that way. I don't like this. You know, there were times when I'd be in my office and my secretary would run in and she's like, you know, Judge so-and-so's on the phone for you. I'm like, oh, what have I done now? And I pick up the call and they're like, can I get a campaign donation? And that's just not right.
Some judges were asking for a campaign donation from the bench.
That's wrong. And I think there's a specific rule about that. You're not supposed to even discuss it when you're on time.
There is a specific rule, but they got this thing called discretion, means that they could trump the law. And do you think discretion, how far should discretion go when it comes to a family court judge?
That's a broad, that's a not only loaded, but broad, wide open question. Listen, family law is complex. And I think that these judges struggle with these decisions. I truly do. I think that they wonder if they've done the wrong thing. In fact, I can tell you about a case where it was Judge Frank Sullivan, probably the most dedicated, honorable man I've ever seen on the bench. He had a case where somebody had hit a kid, a young child, with a hammer. And it was either mom or dad, and they were both denying it. And he said, well, no, but that kid's not going anywhere until someone admits to what happened here so I can protect this child. So the mom took the blame. And so she took the blame and admitted that she did it. Well,
did she? Or was she protecting dad?
She was protecting dad, and dad killed the kid.
Wow.
Well, I just want to, first off, I just want to thank you again for coming on. Thank you also for saying that about remove or retain. No. This is just me. I'm sure Steve has plenty of other stuff for you.
He's ready to go. He's going for the window. He's like, out with the front door.
But you know, it's one of those things where it's like, even if there isn't judges giving favors to attorneys because they gave them campaign contributions, right? Even if let's just naively say that never happens.
Okay.
Right? But the fact that it's even something that's allowed is one of those things that just puts a cloud on the whole system.
It's ripe for abuse.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more.
So I think the remove or retain is a real good idea. When I really started reading about the Missouri Compromise, I was like, you know, I kind of like that.
I think it's the good way to go.
There's going to be corruption in anything. I'm not saying the appointment process is perfect by any means.
People are people.
That's why I'm just saying that I personally would like to see, just in general, appointment first and then election and retain.
Absolutely. I'm with you. I'm with you.
That's just me personally.
We're in agreement.
Do you think judges should be recalled like any other political figure? Because they
I
are.
think there should be a basis for being able to do that, yes.
So you disagree with the Supreme Court ruling saying that the buffer is the Judicial Discipline Committee and judges don't need to be recalled?
The judges have been hauled off the bench. There have judges that have been hauled off the bench, and it's usually the Judicial Discipline Commission that does that. And the Supreme Court can do it too, I believe.
And do you think the Judicial Discipline Commission really holds judges to the fire when they do something wrong, or do you think they really don't?
I don't know how that system works, Steve. I don't know how that system works. There was a case that I was somewhat involved with, and I had a retired FBI agent come to my office, and he was investigating a judge, and he wanted to interview me from the Judicial Commission. I didn't know who the heck he was, and so I picked up the phone and called the Judicial Commission. I said, I got a guy sitting across from me. He says he works for you. And I gave her the name, and she said, well, and I said, good, can you describe him to me? Because I had never been through that process before. And I believe that the feeling that I have is that the Judicial Discipline Commission is less active than they should be. And I have a feeling that the Judicial Commission seldom does much to the judges. I believe that, but this is just a feeling. I can't base it on anything other than what I've seen and heard in the last 17 years.
Well, feeling is good. It works in family court, though. You don't have to bring up any kind of evidence, just feelings and allegations.
It's a lot of evidence.
Hearsays and they just run with it.
No, they don't. Here's the problem. The judge cannot object to you making a hearsay statement. The other attorney should be on their ball, on their game, and say, object, it's hearsay. You know, I do a lot of criminal law, so I feel like I'm up on my procedure, and when somebody tries to introduce a photograph, you know, I'll object as to foundation. And half the time the other attorney goes, what's foundation?
Right, yeah.
And they don't know what they're doing. And the judges cannot run those trials like that. They're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to interrupt. They're not allowed to give legal advice. So I keep a lot of stuff out, and just because I've got a lot of experience in the criminal courts about, you know, admission, you know, procedure and evidence.
65% of family court litigants represent themselves.
Is that right?
Yes. In family court. Do you believe that these litigants, that self-representation, do you believe they get a fair shake?
I think they get more than a fair shake. So? I am right now. I've got in front of Judge Burton. She gives pro se litigants so many chances that I just want to pull my hair out sometimes. And I had a case where just recently I had a guy on the stand, and he had killed a puppy. And I wanted to know about that. And the judge stopped me, and she said he has a right not to incriminate himself. And I'm like, hey, if you're going to try my case, would you not lose it? So, so then,
doesn't he have to plead the fifth?
Well,
himself?
Yeah, but I don't want the judge telling him to take the fifth. And he did every question I asked him. He took the fifth, took the fifth, took the fifth. Oh, okay. And so then I turned to Judge Burton and I said, I'm asking you to take a negative inference from every answer, that every question I asked him that he refused to answer. And she looked at me, and in all candor, she's like, I don't do criminal law, and I don't know that is what I can do. And so she had me brief the issue. And there's two U.S. Supreme Court cases on where you take the fifth in a civil case, it gets held against you. That's not a criminal case, that's a civil case.
Right.
But I mean,
they're starting to make the difference now.
Oh, yeah. But Judge Burton goes out of her way for pro se litigants. She really does.
Well, not all judges do that.
Look, there's another rule. It's another case that says that if you want to act as your own attorney, you act at your own peril. And if you can't follow the rules, you know, you shouldn't be doing that.
I agree with that.
Okay, you should not be doing that. And you know, and there's the Legal Aid Center in Clark County Legal Aid. There's some darn good lawyers over there.
You know, speaking of the Clark County Legal Aid Center, you got to be absolutely destitute, like out in the street, before they give you a pro bono lawyer.
I know.
And
they're 2 years behind right now.
And with the pro bono, it's not really pro bono, because I've seen pro bono attorneys go into court and ask for attorney's fees and costs from the other side. I've seen pro bono.
There's a case that allows you to do that, Wilfong.
So that's not pro bono. Don't attorneys have to go through a CLE, continuing learning education, and do X amount of free legal work every single year to get certified,
Steve,
to keep their bar license?
I don't get paid so often. I do a ton of free legal work. So
I'm saying, don't they have to do that every single year?
No, we don't have to take pro bono cases. We're encouraged to. We don't have to.
You don't have to.
And you report those hours. And believe me, I do plenty of them anyway. I cannot walk away from a client that needs me but can't afford to pay me. And I've got a case right now.
Could you tell me what pro bono means?
I don't know what the Latin translation is.
It means free, right?
Yeah, it means right. We're doing it.
Then why are they asking for monies from the other side if it's free?
Because it's not free. I still have to pay.
I'm confused now. Is it free or is it not?
I gotta pay filing fees. Just the cost of filing a complaint is like $380.
Okay, so technically though, if it's pro bono, kind of be the arbiter here on this one. If it's pro bono, if you're doing a pro bono case for a client, but you ask the other side for attorney fees, then your client still is not coming out of pocket. The other side would be coming out of pocket, correct?
And there's a case
so it is still technically pro bono because you're not making money from
but I
the person you're representing.
My office
still making money from the other side.
Hey, look,
we're just paying out costs, right?
I got staff, I got rent, I got fees, I got to pay, I've got places, I got gas to get there. I mean, it's not free.
They need to change the name from pro bono to something else.
Yeah, to less than full pay.
Less than full pay. It's not pro bono because I mean, it's confusing.
You could just word it as it's not for profit. It's just I'm going to ask for my expenses to be paid back from the other side.
Right.
They need to change the name.
Something like
That's
that.
all I'm saying.
I'm with you. I understand.
Because it's confusing.
And every once in a while, a judge will ask me to take a case, and I do. I do it all the time when judges ask me to do it.
Tell us about the State Bar. Do you think that they are up to snuff on these attorneys? I've seen attorneys get away with murder. Complaints filed against attorneys that big, but yet the attorneys will still be able to practice law.
I don't know what goes on inside that building. All I know is that, from my perspective, they beat on little one-man operations, and they let the big firms just get away with whatever they want because they
What
don't.
Do you think they do that?
If they're doing it intentionally, it's got to be because the big firms will fight them. It costs a fortune for them to get embroiled in those big fights. They can do 10 little guy cases to one big guy case.
So how is that fair to the public?
It's not fair at all. It's not fair at all.
So
I don't know what the State
What do you think
Bar's
we should
doing.
do about that? What could be done?
We need to
Can
get
we
people.
sanction the State Bar?
No, they're their own. They run their own show. They answer to the Supreme Court only.
But where do they get their funding from?
From the attorney's fees.
Do they get funding from taxpayers?
Nope. It's paid for by attorneys, self-funded.
You think that's why they let them go, because they're paying their salary?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
You think the reason why the State Bar let certain attorneys go is because they're paying?
See, I don't know why they do it. I don't know what the heck's going on over there. All I know is that I can't stand getting letters from the State Bar and if you practice family law, you're getting bar complaints. No matter what else you do, people they're not happy, and they have a funny way of seeing things.
Have you got any bar complaints?
Me? Are you kidding me? Yeah.
He said, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah, the dumbest thing I ever did was I paid an attorney and $386 in pennies, and she filed a bar complaint against me.
Money is money.
That's actually.
That's what I tried to say, but the response was, "You knew you're being disrespectful." So I had,
they hit you with a reprimand?
No, they made me write a letter of apology. And
Really, write a letter of apology? And you got attorneys that are stealing money from litigants, saying that they charge retainers, but yet they don't do the work. And you got attorneys that go to court with a litigant and pulls out right there and say, I don't want to represent them no more, and leave the litigant hanging. You got attorneys that break a whole bunch of laws.
Yeah, but Steve, you can't just pull off of a case. You're on a case until the judge says you're off
my
the
God,
case.
Louis Schneider. I got videos of a certain attorney walked into the courtroom and say, I don't want to represent my client anymore, and leaves. And the judge allows them to leave. And I could mention names if you want me to.
I'd rather you didn't.
Okay.
Steve. I can get myself in trouble all by myself.
So you know that this does happen. Although there are rules and there are laws, but like I said, a lot of these family court judges don't follow them.
I know. You know, there's this old adage that my father taught me. My father wasn't even a lawyer. He was a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps. And I don't know where he got it.
What happened to you?
He didn't want me to get involved in it until I was getting out of college. And by then, he's like, okay, let's talk about OCS. I'm like, I want to make money. I want, fast cars and
Fast women?
fast women and beautiful cars, or beautiful women and fast cars. I don't know what it is. But anyway, there's an old adage. If you have the facts, you pound the facts. If you have the law, you pound the law. If you don't have either, you pound the table. And that's that's my whole secret to my success.
So you yell at your TV a lot, huh?
No. Okay. I don't watch legal shows anymore. I've had it. When I come home, I get up at 4:30 in the morning. I got to feed the horses. I got to let the chickens out. I got to rescue pig somebody dropped off.
Farmer Brown here.
Yeah, his name's Kevin Bacon, by the way. My pig's name's Kevin Bacon.
Oh, really?
I do that.
My pet pig when I was growing up.
You had a pet pig?
Well, not really a pet pig, because we ended up slaughtering it and eating it.
Oh, did you name it?
Yeah, my dad did, actually.
Oh, and then killed it?
So we had a male and a female. The female was Miss Piggy, real original, and the male was Arnold.
Okay, you guys are watching a lot of TV over there. But So anyway, I get up in the morning, it's quiet, the horses are happy to see me, I have my own time down there, I step out of the world that I'm in, and then I go to court, and it's an office, and it's fight and rumble and tumble all day long, and then because I'm getting up at 4:30, I go home. Look, I'm a stay-at-home kind of guy, because I know if I go out, I break out in felonies. So I'm not doing that. I stay in. I don't go out. If I don't want to drink and drive, I don't want any problems out in the world. So, I've got my little ranch going, and I love it, and that's my life, and that's what I like to do. And so when you ask if I want to be a judge, no, I don't want to work 60 hours a week. I don't want to do that.
Well, it depends on the judge, because we got some judges that don't show up in court. You don't want me mentioning names, do you?
No. No, I love all those judges. I don't have a problem with any one of those judges.
I got lots of problem with lots of judges.
I know. You cause a lot of trouble, and I think...
Trouble? Is that your interpretation of it? Trouble? Look, because I'm holding them accountable.
You stir the pot, and it's a good thing because it causes conversation and discussion, okay? I think that's a good thing. What I have seen in the past, before I ever knew who you were, you wrote an article about me not filing a bar complaint against somebody. You happen to be in the courtroom.
You have a judiciary duty as an officer of the court. If an attorney or a judge is violating the law, like seeing your client without you being present, that's a violation. Or seeing your client's kid without you being present, that's another violation, and you do nothing about it, you're just as guilty as they are.
Steve, there's got
You're just as guilty as they are.
There's got to be some discretion. The case, you just happen to be in the courtroom. I didn't know who the heck you were. You're sitting in the back of the courtroom. I remember looking back going, who are you guys? And it was with Bob Luke, retired judge. And
we mentioned the names now.
Well, Bob, I like Bob. And so, and Bob had interviewed the kid. Well, there's a rule that says you don't interview kids. All right, and Judge Elliott was extremely upset. She chastised him, said, "You can't do this. I'm not reading it." Threw it out.
One ear out the other.
It got thrown out. It wasn't taken in, and she chastised him, said, "You cannot do it." She basically yelled at him.
And he was a family court judge.
And the next thing I know, I hear, "Hey, there's an article about you for not filing a bar complaint against Bob Luke."
You should have. Don't you think that's
like
what you're supposed to do?
The judge handled it. It was in the courtroom, and Bob Luke is a teddy bear. I'm not going to file a bar complaint against him.
You thought that was handled? The minute he walks out, that courtroom is forgotten.
No. In fact, the state bar wouldn't even touch that. Whatever happens in the courtroom, the state bar doesn't touch. That's the purview of the judge.
But that's a big deal. You got opposing counsel interviewed the minor child without the authorization of the court.
He didn't know he couldn't do it.
He was a family court judge. What do you mean he didn't know he could do it?
He's not a machine,
Oh my
Steve.
God!
He's not a machine. No, he made.
That's like when you go to a restaurant with a young lady, you pull a chair out for her and have her sit down. It's common knowledge. What do you mean he didn't know he could do it? Really? Is that the excuse everybody has?
I'm not making it. All right. I withdraw that statement. I don't want to make excuses for him, but he was chastised by the judge. She threw it out. No harm, no foul. It happened in the courtroom. It's handled. It's handled. The state bar wouldn't have gotten involved because it happened in the courtroom.
Because the state bars are a bunch of wimps. That's why they wouldn't have got involved.
That's Steve Sanson said that. I didn't say that.
They are. They know who they are. And you know what? If we keep turning a blind eye and a deaf ear to this constant corruption in our judiciary, especially in family court, it becomes normalized. And it's like everyday thing now because nobody doesn't want to do nothing about it.
I don't see the corruption. I don't see it. I don't see it, Steve.
So you wouldn't change anything in family court?
Look, you know what? I got this. I have a policy. Somebody comes to me and complains about a system. Don't do that unless you have a suggestion on how to better change it.
I do have a suggestion how to better change it. With the tribunal, with the jury trial, with the remove and retain. Oh yeah, I don't come and say, here's the damn problem. I come and say, here's a problem, and here's how we could fix it.
Right.
That's how I do it.
Well, look, you can't do, just from a logistical standpoint, you can't do jury trials. But the retention thing with the judges, I think, makes a lot of sense. And it takes out that donation and that whole, uneasiness. I know the judges need money from the lawyers. I don't like it. It's not that I mind donating to the campaigns, but it's just I can't donate to everybody equally. And I feel like I'm at a disadvantage. And sometimes
Why do you donate?
Because there's some judges I want to see in that courtroom. There's some people I want to see up on that bench.
What would you do to change family court? What's the one thing that really irks at you that you would say, you know what, this needs to change? And how would you go about doing it?
Honestly, the election of the judges. That's the one major problem I have with the entire system, is the way the judges are elected and that the lawyers are paying for those campaigns. The general public doesn't donate to those campaigns. It's coming out of the lawyers' pockets and their own pockets.
There's a lot of people that donates to judges that are not attorneys.
Well, all right. So not that I'm aware of, but anyway, I would stop that, and then and the judges. I mean, look, I think the Review Journal does that rating the judges thing. I think that's a pretty good step.
And I don't believe that the transparency is good enough with the Review Journal with the rating of the judges, because they send it out to all these different attorneys, and the attorneys are going to give their favorite or their friends. They're not going to really take a look at the judge. How is this person on the bench? Oh, that's my friend. Oh, they gave me attorney's fees last time I was there. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I don't think the transparency with judging the judges with the Review Journal is any good. I think transparency is like the one we did when we did the round table, and we talked about all those judges on camera. Now that's transparency, because we're willing to put our face and what we say on camera,
right,
for everybody to see. There's all this hidden crap. Nobody, don't. Like, you don't want us to mention names.
I gotta live and work in that environment.
Yeah, no. And I understand that.
And you're a little on the harsh side. I don't know if anybody ever told you that, Steve. But
Joe Lombardo said that I was adversarial. And I took that as a compliment.
Good.
You know why?
Why?
Because that's what it takes sometimes. It takes somebody that's adversarial to say, hey, this is wrong and we need to fix it. There's too many people that don't want to take a stand on anything. Either you take a stand on something or you fall for everything. And nobody wants to take a stand because they're freaking scared. They're terrified. And I don't know why. Because this system in family court is corrupt. I had lots of friends on that family court bench all the way to 16, okay? In fact, VIP, I put a lot of them on the bench. We endorsed them. We supported them. Your friend, Mr. Quacky Duckworth, walked around with a little yellow ducky all the time. And we thought that was comical. We supported him. We put him on the bench. And then when people start coming to us and say, hey, this judge did this judge did that, I didn't believe them. I didn't believe them for a good 6-7 months. I didn't want nothing to do with it because I found it hard to believe. Until I started to schedule the court observers and started to go in there and started to watch videos and look at all these transcripts and manuscripts and motions and orders and all that. That's when I said, you know what? It is messed up. We need to take a stand. Every time we turn our back to it, it's more corruption. It becomes normalized. And if attorneys such as yourself would start banding together and say, you know what? We need to change this system because this system is not fair. Does a civil court judge has jurisdiction to tell a litigant that they have to take a drug test? The answer is no, because the law does not support that. And if a litigant stands up for their constitutional rights, says, you know what, I'm not going to take that drug test because, look, the law says that I don't have to. All of a sudden, my urine is dirty just because I'm standing up for the law and I'm standing up for my constitutional right? Because I don't agree that mom should take the kid to Pensacola and I live here and I'm supposed to go with it because she married an active duty veteran and I'm supposed to say, okay, take my kid. I'll just see him every 3 months. And that's supposed to be the best interest of the child? That's wrong. For a judge to go ahead and say, you know what, you're an alcoholic or you're a drug user just because mom or dad said so without any evidence to support it, that's okay because I have discretion. I'm the law. I'm the judge. That's bullshit. That's like Mike Tyson says, that's ludicrous. Do you know how many attorneys call me up and tell me stuff about family court? How many attorneys, or I don't even know if they're attorneys, how many times I get in my P.O. box, the sender is me and the receiver is me, but when I open up the envelope, I find pictures and I get videotapes and I get motions and I get pleadings and I get all this. I didn't wake up one day and say family court is corrupt. I woke up saying it wasn't corrupt. And then when I go through all these different evidence, not hearsay, I realized that it was corrupt and that we need to do something about it. But nobody wants to do something about it, Lou. And I don't understand why. Maybe I do. Maybe they're worried about they might be blackballed and isolated, and they might not have positive rulings on their case. Maybe they're trying to protect their clients, and I get that. But at the same time, they know the system is messed up. They know it is, but Steve, they don't want to take a stand.
I take offense when you say that the court is corrupt. I don't see it. It's not corrupt. Corruption to me is taking payments and being bought off. I don't see that.
No. When you don't follow the law, like for example, there is a law that protects service members' disability. Mm-hmm. It's called the Service Members. I forget what it's called. Service Members Disability Act. Okay, it says that a veteran that's a disabled veteran, you cannot take their service-connected disability benefits for anything.
That's right.
Anything.
That's right. I use it all the time.
But yet state judges, family court judges are taking it for child support, alimony, until we got a law that says you can't take, a state law that says you can't take it for alimony.
It's a federal law.
But there's a federal law that says you can't touch it at all. Even the IRS can't even tax it.
That's right.
Come on, the IRS got Al Capone, all right? Even if the IRS can't touch that money, why are these family court judges skating around the law? That's corrupt.
A family court judge can't order the federal government to take part of your disability pension. They can try, but you know what happens? When they submit the order to the feds, they send it back. They're not following those orders. It's a waste of time.
Yeah, but now you're stuck at a DA's office for child support that you owe.
Look, they take it into consideration of your ability to pay. They can count it as your ability to pay. They can't garnish it, but they can count it as your ability to pay. And kids aren't free, Steve.
And if you don't pay it, then you get your driver's license taken away. You get warrants for your arrest. You get all these fees and interest charges on you. It messes up with your job because there's no employee that wants to go and hire you when you have a garnishment for child support. It messes up your passport. I mean, it does a hooray of things.
So what's your point?
My point is corruption has different faces. Just because you don't take a cash payment, that doesn't necessarily mean you're corrupt or not corrupt. If you violate federal law, if you violate a litigant's constitutional right, if you refuse to allow litigants to speak in your courtroom or provide evidence, if you make a litigant a vexatious who's fighting for their kids, and a lot of litigants fight for their kids, how come attorneys, when they file all these papers, and how come they're not considered vexatious? Why is it only the litigant that's considered vexatious? The attorneys are there representing you to collect what? A paycheck. A litigant is there because the love of the child. They want their kid in their life because it's their child. They want to be part of their child. They want to grow it. They want to raise it. They want to be a part of their child. Why is a litigant vexatious, but the attorney that files maybe even double that is not vexatious? How come vexatious doesn't work on both sides of the aisle is what I'm saying.
Because you can fire your lawyer, get another lawyer, and keep filing. So it's the person is responsible for whatever their attorneys do. That's the rule. You own if the attorney screws up, it's on the client. Believe it or not.
So here's what I got out of it. Money is more powerful than the love for your child.
Oh, come on. Steve.
No, that's what I got, because this is how I arrive at that. Because an attorney could file all these paperwork and will not, I've never seen an attorney considered vexatious in a court of law yet. But if a litigant was to file half of what that attorney filed, the litigant is deemed vexatious. To shut the litigant up so the litigant can't file anymore, that's a violation of their constitutional right, because they don't have a right to defend themselves.
It's not easy to get somebody declared a vexatious litigant. Okay, that's not easy.
I've seen them do it on the drop of a dime, just to shut the litigant down.
I haven't seen that, but okay. So, look, unless I'm looking at a specific case, and then when you, Steve, with all due respect, you're putting yourself in the position of second guessing these judges. You don't have the legal education and you don't know the statutes. So you're second guessing judges that are making decisions based on the law, and you get pissed off about it, but I need to see the facts. I need to see how we got there. I can't just, if you don't like the decision, then all of a sudden you're trashing that judge. I want to see how we got there. I want to see, and by the way, drug tests, I think that's a valuable tool that's needed to protect children.
Yeah, you're right. The drug test is a valuable tool that needs to protect children, but they need to go make sure the law is on their side before they do it.
Well,
okay, they're not doing that.
Look, what I don't understand.
If they have a problem with this drug testing, or they want to institute that, make it that a civil judge should go ahead and have a litigant take a drug test, they need to change the law, just like frisk and search, stop and frisk. They didn't like the law in New York, they changed it, right? Because it was a constitutional violation, right? And there's a lot of these laws that they have that are constitutional violations. It was always illegal to do that.
It was always illegal to do that.
Well, they did it.
I know they were doing it. They do all kinds of stuff.
And that doesn't make it right, though, is my saying.
No, it doesn't make it right.
Just because you feel in your heart you're protecting your kid, all right, somebody breaks into your house and destroys your property and kills or harms one of your family members, do you have the legal right to go search that person down and beat him up or kill him? No, you don't. So why does a judge think that they have the legal right to tell a litigant to take a drug test when they're not a criminal judge?
Because children's lives are in danger and at stake.
I'm revenging my family member. Does that make me right?
No, but in family court, that person, so two people come in, one is saying that the other person uses drugs, abuses drugs, and this new thing about pot. Now, pot's legal, but under the state law, if you have more than 5 nanograms of THC in your blood per microliter, you're DUI. And so if you smoke a little bit of pot 2 days ago, you're still DUI 2 and 3 days later. And the kids are in the cars now, and the judges, I don't like what I'm seeing. The judges are like, well, that's a low level of pot, but it's your DUI, but you're still driving around with your kid, and they're letting that happen. I don't like it. I don't think, you want to be a parent, don't use drugs. You want to be a parent, don't be drunk when you got your kid. You want to be a parent, stop smoking pot. And then while you're in court, and while the state is climbing in your life with a microscope on you, and you're still using drugs, that's a problem. If you don't want to stop partying, then maybe you shouldn't be a full-time parent. It's hard to be a parent. It's exhausting being a parent.
But pot is legal. And they need to go...
But so is beer. But you can't be drunk when you got your kids.
They need to go back and reassess that whole thing about the use of marijuana. Because if you smoke marijuana last night, you wake up the next morning, you're not necessarily high.
Right. You're not high, but it's still enough in your system
but it's
to get
in your
arrested
system,
and charged.
So that makes you high.
Right.
But see, that they need to take another look at that, because I don't think that's right.
I agree with you. That law should be changed. In other states like Massachusetts, where I've got friends that are cops and lawyers, it's simply based on your inability to operate a motor vehicle safely. So if a cop observes you driving over the line or slow or swerving or whatever, now they're going to charge you with DUI. But if it's in your system and you're driving fine, you're not DUI. And that's what they think they need to do here. And there was a big case with John Watkins had it with, I think her name was Jessica, I forgot her name, but she fell asleep at the wheel in a van and she killed 5 kids on the side of the road that were picking up garbage. You remember that that case?
Yeah.
That poor girl went to prison for 20 years, and she had almost no pot in her system. She was just tired and fell asleep. It was an accident, and that poor girl went to prison for 20 years, and finally she's out now. But that was a terrible travesty of justice. Terrible. She wasn't high.
We're running pretty.
Well, Louis Schneider, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Come on, I'll come over and fight anytime you want, Steve.
No, honestly, I don't think it was. I really like that somebody comes in. And here's my thing. Whether I agree with you or not on whether family court's corrupt or it's not corrupt or whatever, very rarely do we get somebody that's an attorney, especially because the questions you're being asked are about people that you very well on Monday morning, you are going to see one of them.
Yeah.
You know, and it takes a lot of guts to do that. And I just wish more either attorneys or judges or just people of the court would come in and be willing to discuss these issues, because it's okay to not agree on everything. That's what makes us people.
Right.
But if there's not an open dialogue and we're not having a discussion at some point, then...
No, I'm with you. And I think what you guys are doing is extremely valuable because it creates conversation and it leads to change. And you know, again, my dad was a prolific reader, and he used to say, and I know this is an old saying, all it takes for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Could you look into the camera and a close out and give your point of contact?
My point of contact.
Yeah, just somebody wants to hire you. Your office.
My name's Louis Schneider. I have 17 years of experience. I do criminal and family law, and I'm happy to represent you. My office is 702-435-2121. If you mention this, you got my name and number. I won't charge you for a consult. If you want to come in and sit down and talk, I'm happy to do it.
Thank you. Folks, that's Louis Schneider, Nevada, an attorney who specializes in family court.
No, I'm not a special.
In my opinion, he specializes in family court. All right, because his caseload is more family court than anything else, right?
It ebbs and flows from criminal and family.
Okay.
But yeah.
He's a good attorney, and I would recommend him. This is Steve Sanderson, Jim Jonas for Veterans in Politics. Until next time.